Um, there's a woman from Malawi who comes to clean the house where Diane and I are house sitting, and a man who comes every 2 weeks to tend the garden. The Uber drivers who have taken us across this city from Zimbabwe, Somalia, Ethiopia, Malawi, Ghana, and other places from this big continent of 54 countries. And they're making life where they can. I don't know their status. I only try to say their names. Recently, a number of Ghanaian nationals in South Africa were gathered and repatriated by their government in Ghana. Self-deporting, some called it. And I followed this from the house where we are living. I've been listening to part of the native population, the citizens of South Africa. Some of them, they're not a majority, but enough of them are crying out against the government, saying that the government is failing them. And they're crying out against immigrants. In my view, the citizens are legitimately frustrated with their government, but the immigrants are being painted with a broad brush. And I thought, Diane and I left one country where immigrants were being hunted, and we're witnessing their stigmatization here. How long? 2 Sundays ago, we recognized the breathlessness of it all, violence, empire, questions that rise in us when the world does what it does. And so we're not at the beginning anymore. We're not at the end. We are in the long middle. Habakkuk is each of us, the part of us that still believes and still has questions. He's a human being who refused to pretend that things were fine. Habakkuk lived around 600 BC. Babylon was the empire. And that empire was devouring nations, smaller nations. The people were watching the powerful do what the powerful do and asking God, where are you? We live in different times. Everything else is the same. 2 weeks ago, I told you about driving past Amazon's continental headquarters here in Cape Town, built on indigenous Khoisan sacred ground. 2 rivers meeting there for more than 100,000 years. 20 years of court battles, and yet the building went up. That is the empire Habakkuk was writing about, not ancient history. Empire saying what empires have always said, this is ours now. The dates are different, empire is not. And the empire's logic doesn't stay at the corporate level, it gets into people. This country, South Africa, which survived apartheid partly because of the solidarity of the African continent, now has a movement in its streets. The slogan, South Africans first. The same script, a different flag. Well, we have been sitting with Habakkuk's cry and with some of our own cries. He named the violence. He received a hard answer from God. And then he did something almost unthinkable. He stopped. We read chapter 2, verse 1. He said, I will climb up to my watchtower and stand at my guard post. There I will wait to see what the Lord says and how he will answer my complaint. He went to the tower. I'm asking, will you meet me at the watchtower? Beyond the distractions. He didn't keep refreshing the page. He stood still and waited. That's the opposite of scrolling. The watchtower is the long middle. Not the first tears, not the final answer, the place where faithfulness, where integrity learns to live free. We are living through a gusher of information these days with no precedent. Before the internet, we thought bad news came fast. The morning paper, the evening newscast, a letter that had traveled for a couple of weeks to reach us. But there was space between pieces. You could grieve a little bit. That pace is gone. Now everything arrives at once. Gaza and the Supreme Court and anti-Black action and the president's private police and the billionaires and the new war without pause, without proportion, with no one to help you hold it. And the system is designed this way. The same company whose building sits on Khoisan ground also runs the cloud infrastructure that the media feed. Extract the land, extract the attention. Same logic, different surface. Speed is not a side effect, it is the mechanism. So here's what we do. We try to protect children from this gusher. We know instinctively that children can't receive everything at once. I mean, a 7-year-old suddenly handed the news from Gaza, the images, the numbers, the diplomatic failure, is overwhelmed because the kid's weak. No, not because the kid is weak, but because the information belongs to a stage of life they haven't grown into yet. Her protection is a gift of time, but one day she'll have to hold it, and maybe she'll have some context. People around her who have grieved it already. But this gusher gives no one that protection. It delivers to every adult, every hour, more than any human nervous system was made to receive. And the thing is that we find it irresistible. We can't pause for a moment and stop scrolling, checking. In some ways, we are all overwhelmed children and addicts because the conditions that we are living in exceed what anyone was built to process. So ancient grief comes back up. Fear that never got named surfaces. Helplessness from the early moments of life, that classroom, that table where the family fell apart, returns without warning because the gusher never lets one grief settle before the next one arrives. We are facing adult crises with nervous systems that never finished processing childhood ones. And no one told us that it was allowed to be hard. And this is why Habakkuk's action is significant. He went to the watchtower, and God answered him there. Will you meet me at the watchtower? Chapter 2, verses 2 and 3. Then the Lord said to me, write my answer plainly on tablets so that a runner can carry the correct message to others. This vision is for a future time. It describes the end and it will be fulfilled. If it seems slow in coming, wait patiently, for it will surely take place. It will not be delayed. It's not passive. Habakkuk didn't wait by scrolling. He went to a high place and watched deliberately. Because from the tower, you can see the horizon. This is the opposite of the gusher. I'm asking you, will you meet me at the watchtower? And then God gives Habakkuk a word that has carried people for 2,600 years. Chapter 2, verse 4. He says, look at the proud. They trust in themselves and their lives are crooked, but the righteous will live by their faithfulness. You see, the proud, the empire, the billionaires, the system running at full speed, they trust in themselves and their lives are crooked. But the righteous live by their faithfulness, by their integrity, not by the gusher, by faithfulness. You see, faith moves at a different speed. Faith carries a longer memory and a longer hope than any seed can hold. Faith says there is a vision. It has an appointed time. It will not be delayed. And it asks you to live from that. Even when you can't see the vision yet, even when the grief is old and unfinished, even when the pace of the world has left you breathless, even here in the long middle. Dearest ones, this community, these little rectangles from your different rooms is one kind of watchtower. Not a place to overload each other with information, but a place for joy and for courage, a place to slow down together, to name what we have seen, to wait for what God is doing. And the children, the babies in our lives, they need someone who has been to the watchtower, someone who has stood in the overwhelm and come back steadier. You can't give them that if the gusher has taken you under. So I'm asking you, will you meet me at the watchtower? No, I'm not advising you what you need to do because you might have a purpose for doing what you do. But last summer, I left Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I'm telling you what I had to do. The platforms were holding too much of my attention, and I could feel that it was costing me. And I still check things too much, emails, texts, WhatsApp, my checking account balance. But I do know what it felt like to remove 3 of those loud voices. This is what I mean by the watchtower, not perfect silence, but a deliberate withdrawal from something that was consuming you. A deliberate withdrawal from something that was consuming you, withdrawal long enough to hear something else, long enough to breathe. It's not escapism, it's how the righteous live. And once you step away from the gusher, something else may come up. Not less grief, but truer grief. The grief that belongs to your own life. The grief that has a name. For Diane and me, one of those names this past week was Felice. A few days ago, Diane and I learned that our friend Felice Bradley had died. She lived in Oxnard her whole life. She lived with disabilities, and she was dear to us both. And you know what? We've all had more loss than we realize. So I want to say this about grief, that the gusher trains us to forget. Death makes a claim on us even when the person who died was not dear to us, even if they were difficult, even when the relationship was hard, even if they hated us. Something in us knows that a life has ended, that a particular face, a particular voice, a particular way of moving through the world is gone. And that's always a loss worth marking. We have lost the pace at which human beings can grieve. The system took it, not by accident, by design. Overwhelm is the product. And so there are people we should have grieved who never got that grief. Maybe on the Central Coast, families separated. In Gaza, children under the rubble. In Sudan and Haiti, people watching the same system move through their lives and call it progress. We owe them more than a scroll. We owe them our grief. Will you meet me at the Watchtower? Diane and I, sometimes we watch political commentary from the United States, and I want to tell you, those voices sound like Habakkuk. People of conscience asking anyone, how long? They're not being dramatic. They mean it. Yesterday, the United States turned 250 years old. What we are watching is not a rough patch. We are watching a system built on genocide, enslavement, wars, and extraction, sinking in the quicksand of its own making. And I'm going to tell you honestly, even knowing what that system was built on, it's still kind of sad. It feels like the death of dreams, even if sometimes the dreams were illusions. It feels like our children's and our grandchildren's twilight in some ways. That's the lament. And it's allowed to be grief, even when you saw it coming. But I also need to say this as I close. Twilight turns to night, but night turns into morning. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And then I remembered something, 2 songs that have carried people across generations. The first is old. This joy that I have, the empire didn't give it to me. The empire didn't give it, and the empire can't take it away. And the second song you may have heard, Israel Houghton wrote it. I'm trading my sorrows. I'm trading my shame. I'm laying it down for the joy of the Lord. I'm trading my sickness. I'm trading my pain. I'm laying it down for the joy of the Lord. That's not a denial of grief. It's grief's deepest response. The empire gave us breathlessness. It gave us the gusher. It paved over the rivers and extracted our attention, but it did not give us this joy, and it can't reach it. So please, meet me at the Watchtower and bring your grief with you. Bring your tired nervous system. Bring the part of you that has been scrolling because you didn't know how else to pray. There is still a vision. It will not delay. We are in the long middle, but we are not alone in it. The righteous live by faithfulness, by integrity, not by the feed, but by faith. Ashe.
Pastor Moore, the Watchtower, I love that, you know. And you know what it made me think of was prison. When I was in prison, I didn't have a phone. There was no scrolling. You know what I watched? I watched this COVID hit and I watched George Floyd get murdered. And you know what? I watched the rest of America get to see it too because COVID had them away from work at home. And I watched America respond. And we had this conversation. You know, it was an important time to see the positive, even though it was going to get bad, the positive movement towards something. And it's still rough right now. But God, I was in the Watchtower then. And you know, it's really difficult because they try and throw a lot of things at you to get you distracted. But you know what? I love this. I think I'll stop scrolling a little more and take my time and I'd like to hear what this woman right here has to say.
Thank you so much, Pastor Moore. You said so much, and somebody really close to me calls it the waiting room, the watchtower that you're talking about. She always says, I know it's hard to be in the waiting room, Julia, but I'm sitting next to you. You know what I mean? Like, you're never alone in the waiting room, just like you said. And I was thinking about, like, if you take just this administration from the beginning when he took office, it was rapid fire. Rapid fire,
The
you
gushing.
know? Yeah.
Intentional.
And, and they said, just like you said, they told us it was intentional. So we know they're doing it on purpose. So that doesn't make it any easier to tolerate. And I felt exactly what you were saying. When they had this thing about DEI, right? Let's take away all the DEI. I needed a minute to get really angry and upset about that. And then 15 minutes later, they started firing all the high-ranking women and blacks in the military, And then I needed time to grieve that. And then next thing you know, they're taking away USAID. And then, then it became one, and then ICE and the people who, Renee Good, and then what's happening in Alligator Alcatraz, and then Iran, and then Gaza happening in the background, that it's like, genocide is happening in the background. You know what I'm saying? Kind of madness is that? That I am so distracted by what's happening right here in my backyard. I can't even breathe. I can't even take any of it in. And the rest of the world is burning, And like, can I tell you quickly about the news? I was, 50 years old when I learned about Democracy Now! and Amy Goodman. God bless Amy Goodman, man. And the first time I saw this news, it was like, geez, I have been hiding under a rock.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And what a difference between, 10 minutes of listening to Democracy Now! And 10 minutes of ABC, David Muir, where they forget about it. And there's a pattern to the way they report the news. They're not reporting the news. You know what I'm saying? They're keeping us.
They're telling you how to feel.
And keeping us tuned in. Like, if you don't tune in at 11:30 tonight, you're going to have, malaria in your backyard tomorrow. You know what I mean? More fear. So this was great. And just one more thing I want to say. I know that you cannot have faith without courage. And you cannot have courage without faith. They work together. Especially in the long term, just like you're saying, more will be revealed. We can't, like, I want a solution now. I want to take action and see a solution, see a result. And faith says you might not see a result, but you got to keep that going. Keep that want to see a result going, even if you don't see a result. And it's hard to stay hopeful when you don't see a result, but that's why we do it together. That's why we don't sit alone in that waiting room. So that was great. I would love to hear what everyone else has to say. I'm all fired up. Any thoughts?
I can't help but say that I've also, this entire thing had Jimi Hendrix in the back of my head.
Me too.
The
Totally.
Watchtower.
Yeah.
The entire time.
Yeah.
I get it. No, I got it too. All along the Watchtower, believe me.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael.
Yeah, I'm really overwhelmed with all kinds of conflicting ideas and emotions right now. I'm asking for some help here. Sincerely. I need some how-to advice here. Linnea and we used to be, I was a poli-sci major. Linnea was a sociology major. We lived this stuff. We lived the news. We lived the causes, and we haven't watched news for, oh man, a year now. No, actually, since the election. We don't, at least I don't even hardly go on Facebook anymore. But one thing, almost every day, we go on patrol or we help our neighbors in some way. And the one feed, it's not media, but we have our VC Defense Signal, our Signal app, and I keep the patrol app every day because several times every day, people need to be helped. We need to be able to stand between these horrible monsters and the innocent people who they're snatching up. So if I choose to answer, if we respond, even not even fully respond, but every week now I can be face to face with 7 of these sons of bitches surrounding a person at the county jail. And the only thing we can do is try to dialogue with them and try to encourage and advise the victims. No dice nada. No firme nada. It's too late for that. And what I do now, Linnea is much more peaceful, and I'm trying not to be antagonistic to the guys, but the one thing that I have to say every time is, I'm old, and you know that, but I'm hoping to stay alive long enough to testify at your trial. And that's what I tell every one of them. I'm going to testify at your trial. So I don't have a watchtower right then. I have all of you in my hearts. And I have my partner here who's in the screen. And we have our VC Defensive Community. But we can't shut down the patrol signal. We have to stay. And it sucks the life out of you. This last week, I hadn't turned it off. At 12:05, ICE came to the jail and took 2 guys. So what I just need, how do I keep the watchtower in my heart all week long? But I have to stay vigilant. I just need help.
You're a soldier, Mike. Let me just tell you something. When we were in our breakout room and you shared what you shared, I'm gonna tell you something. You inspire me. Look, sometimes, you know what? We don't know. Like right now, I understand what you're talking about. The Watchtower was when I was in prison. Right now, I'm advocating for the people that can't speak. So I don't get a real good chance to not scroll because I'm doing those same things. But I think we need to find time in there to do that. You know what I mean? Take 30 minutes, man. Take 30 minutes and go walk on the beach. You're in Ventura, if you can, or something. Find 30 minutes to just say, hey, you know what? I'm doing everything I can. You know?
Can I say, Michael, I thought of an answer when you asked that question. You want to be there to see this person be put on trial. So I think the waiting room is have faith. The hummingbird is right outside. Oh my God. Have faith that they will be put on trial.
Mm-hmm.
You might not be there to see it, and that's okay. They will be put on trial some way, somehow, and that's the faith. You know what I mean? And it's okay if you don't see it. Meanwhile, you and others will be holding hands, you know, how do you say? Like when you manifest these things, you know what I mean? We'll manifest it. It will happen. And the faith is that you might not see it, and that's okay, you know?
Thank you, Julia. Clint, everybody talks about the beach, and the beach is nice. We are blessed to be out here at the border of the farmlands, so
Oh, that's beautiful.
we can walk through these farmlands.
Super peaceful and quiet.
It's beautiful. We can see the crops sprouting, and yeah, we got a beautiful, and the mountains in the background, the farmlands. That's sustenance. Thank you.
Dr. Dave, morning.
Wait, just before Dr. Dave shares what's on his heart, I'm going to ask if at all you can, if you're in a position, and particularly if you're sighted, I'd like for you to turn on your camera and take a look at at least part of our watchtower. Just take it in. If we can reflect, if we can take in these voices, these faces, without judgment, knowing that we're all in different places. Every one of us has our own, I guess you might say, our own struggle, our own journey. But we are here with each other by choice. And let this moment be a prayer. Let the listening be a prayer. Let the looking be a prayer. Let the considering and the reflections, let them be a prayer. Sometimes we lack language for prayers, verbal prayers. Everybody here represents other people, dear ones, family, people who are on our hearts, people we think about daily, weekly. And yet we're here for one another as well. Let this be our prayer. Okay, David.
What I wanted to say to Michael was that confidence for all of them, that we are just full of admiration for you, for your strength, for what you do. I mean, you really, as Clint said, you really are a warrior for justice. One of the precepts that Pastor Moore has given us is to connect with nature, recharge with nature, and you're doing that, and that's one place you get your strength from. Another place is from the community. And as far as justice is concerned, I've always felt that justice is really a theological concept. It's not for this world. You look around and you see the wicked prosper, and you see righteous people trod underfoot by the forces of evil. I don't think that there is much justice in this world. And that's why we have faith. We trust there'll be justice in the next world.
Thank you.
The righteous will live by their faithfulness.
Amen.
Thank you.
Their integrity. Wow. Thank you, David. That was profound. Well, Rosie's going to lead us in communion today. So I hope we're all ready for what Rosie has to give us.
Here you go. Hey, there's a little bit of grounds in it. I'm sorry. I freshly ground it. And it fucking
This was so heavy.
it's delicious.
I so appreciate all of what Brother Michael and Aya are doing along with everyone else. But I mean, you're doing what so many people wish they could be doing, but are unable to do for legitimate, reasons, whether they be health situations and so on, And I thank you from the core of my heart. I was surprised to see I'm doing communion. I love you all so much. I thought about what the Word of God says in Galatians 5:22 through 23, the fruit of the Spirit. And it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. And so as we heard this heavy-duty message and what everyone shared, let's keep this in mind as we take communion, thanking God for producing that fruit in each one of us, for the Holy Spirit who guides us, sustains us,